Welcome back to another Discord discussion. This week we'll be having another guest with us, my friend Meme, 20-year-old man. So he'll bring a little different perspective into this week's topic. And speaking of topics, I'm going to quote the most famous of lines on Forrest Gump. I may not be a smart man, but I know what love is. And the topic of today is going to be love, right? So love falls into a great number of categories. And when we're growing up as young men and boys, we learn if we say, "Oh, I love you," we get the kisses and the hugs and the attention. And then our moms tell us, that they love us without condition, and we believe them, right? But I don't know that we really, as a society, have such the stranglehold on the term love, right? And um, how it should be articulated. You know, we tend to say it really easily. Oh, I loved that movie. Oh, I love you. And I don't know that we necessarily use that word as much as we should, or we use it in a context that doesn't necessarily represent the same thing to each person. So what I'm going to do is kind of go around the room and kind of get everybody's, when you hear the term love, what's your initial definition, as it were? And I'll start with Aaron since his mic is chiming in for us, so obviously he wants to talk. So go ahead, Aaron.
That, that's probably feedback for me, but I'd say there's, people use. You said your point. People use the word love to mean for all different types of things. I think the initial part of the conversation was to talk about love with respect to people, and I think, I'd say early on when we're growing up, we're introduced to love with parents or even siblings, and sometimes love to hate on siblings, right? You love your brother or sister, but sometimes you just want to kill them. And so, I guess that's maybe the one thought I'd throw into the room is that when you're talking about love for people, I'm sure you've all experienced it at some point where you thought you were in love with someone and then they did something, and a strong feeling of love changes to a strong feeling of hate, because that might be the other end of the spectrum when you think about love.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
just throw that in the room that that maybe there's a bit of a spectrum there on love, and um, the opposite of love is hate. So if someone says I don't know what love is, well, do you know what hate is? And then maybe you can understand for people that feel love what they're feeling, because it's on the opposite end of that spectrum.
Fair enough. What do you think, Phil? I don't know. Phil, you're still muted. I don't know if you're caught us. Well, we'll get back to Phil. What do you say, Fly?
Wow, man, love can be. I mean, just like he says, the hate is the opposite of love. But what is love? I mean, have we ever seen what love look like? No. If you have a pet, now animals, a dog, unconditionally love you, your dog, your pets. It's something about that. They show us what love is. I talk about that on my channel a lot. Love is living on value energy. But what if you never know what love looks like? What if you never seen a successful love relationship? What if you don't even love yourself? Love has a lot. It's a lot of different variations to love to me. Man. It's just I always say, yes, I'll go by fly first. Love yourself. You have to find out. You have to love you totally, which means that um, you accept who you are as a person. You accept yourself physically, mentally, emotionally. Accept it. And when you have accept that part of you, that whole totality of who you are, spiritually and mentally and emotionally, physically, to me, that's love. The first step of love, accepting yourself. And the reason why I say it is because then no one will have any power. Who cares what they say? You know, who cares what you think? Fuck you. You know, you're not adding happiness to my life. You're only taking away. So you have to love yourself first. But love has different definitions and meanings to me.
Fair enough. What do you think, Meme?
I have a I have a bit of a similar take to what you me mean and who's the guy that just talked Phil.
Fly.
Is it Phil?
Fly.
Yeah, Fly. Sorry, my bad. Um, but I have a similar take to it. I think it all kind of revolves in context. We use it in so many different ways. I don't think it can be defined with one set definition. I was like, we say love to somebody that we care about, just like you said, with like maybe like your partner or your parents. But and then we also say like, hey, I love that movie. Like that was like saying that was like a good movie. So I think it's all lays in the context. I don't think I've had I've myself. I don't think I've ever been truly. I guess you could say this is kind of cringy, but in love. So I don't really have a good definition of that aspect of it, but I think it's not just a set in stone idea that there or like set in stone definition. I think people use it in so many ways, kind of so loosely that it forms into multiple different, you know, definitions. That's my take on it.
Okay. ML?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of things to say about it. I'm posting.
I was reading it.
Yeah, just in case anyone else hasn't seen, I'm just posting a bunch of kind of quotes and a poem, all just a bunch of kind of different ways of thinking about love, including this final one: "They will love me for that which destroys me," which is a quote by Sarah Kane, who was a very brilliant and troubled young playwright in the 1990s who was really kind of a breakout star and killed herself at the age of 27. And she had a lot to say about love. So I think that the poem that I posted above it talks about love, certainly in terms of the acceptance aspect of it, where it's like if you love something, you're not, I think, going to try and, well, I don't want to say you're not going to try and change it, but you're certainly not going to try and change it for anything other than it's better. And I just like that quote by Richard Brendan. The world doesn't want to be saved. It wants to be loved. That's how you save it. And I just thought there's something very simple and correct about that. It's like if we all loved the world, it wouldn't be in jeopardy. Because why would you put something in jeopardy that you love? That would be like me taking my cat and just dangling out in front of traffic, and it's like, this is how I show my love. Like, no, that's not how any rational, I think, thing shows love. So, I don't know, I have a lot of thoughts about love. Like, you can reduce it to biology and just say it's a complex series of, chemicals and hormones and stuff that your brain releases and that slowly fades over time because it was never intended to be some like permanent long-term pair bonding thing that goes into forever because our evolution doesn't care about that. But I mean, this is one of those times actually for love. I'm not actually that concerned about the biological aspects of it. I'm not concerned that it might have at least its like the physical structures in our brain that produce the experience that we interpret as love. The fact that those structures are evolved, that doesn't actually, like some very cynical kind of super negative atheist types like to really dwell on that as though that's a reason to simply discard the whole enterprise. And to me, I'm like, well, everything that we are and do, if you're looking at it from the atheistic evolutionary biological perspective, everything that we do and are can be thrown out the same way. It's all that. So to me, the fact that love has like a biology and an evolution and an evolved history to it, for once, I'll bring it up like this once, but I don't think I'm going to be bringing it up that much more because it doesn't really interest me. It's like, yeah, so what? I mean, everything that we do, say, and are in that context, in that frame, is evolved. So you either accept it all or you throw it all out. So Yeah, to me, love is, I think, more about the. You could say it's more about the spiritual. It's more about. It's not something that I think logic has a lot to say about. Oddly enough, maybe that's a controversial statement. I don't know.
So
But
okay,
isn't that because it's an emotion?
Okay, well, let's take that as a starting point to try and like put a boundary around what love is. So can the totality of love, and I'm not challenging you because I don't know the answers to anything, I'm just questioning it. So can the totality of love be encapsulated by like the category of emotion? Is there anything about love that is not explained by an emotion?
yeah,
I don't
actually,
think.
I'm going to jump in for
And
a
again,
second.
I don't know the answers,
Sure,
so
and
take it
and
away.
that's what makes this a conversation, um, not an oration. The thing with love, okay, and I'm going to expound a little bit on the definition. And love is also an action, just like when
Yeah,
we
so
were
let's say
talking.
emotion. So now we're saying emotion and.
Yeah, because I can't necessarily. You know when someone loves you. Like, okay, I'm going to use men for a minute, right? We work on the idea, and I'm going to turn your volume down, Aaron. And if you want to, before you talk that way, I'll turn you back up. It's just so that I don't have the interference when we're talking. Because your mic is picking up. I know you're traveling, and I appreciate you being here. Um, the thing that you have to look at when you're looking at love is okay. It's an actionable item. I'll give you an example, and I was going to use men. We think women should recognize we love them based on the behaviors in which, and actions in which we do, whereas women, and my wife was talking about this the other day, is there's different ways to love, right? There's love languages, and there's a lot of topic on this. There's a lot of data. It's the example of like words of affirmation, gift giving, receiving gifts. Each person has a language that they love in. And the problem you have is most people will love someone else in their language without ever asking the question of how that person receives love or how they incorporate love, right? So, an example, my daughter, if I give her an unexpected gift to Camille, right, she's excited. She loves getting gifts. I like giving gifts. I'm more with my relationship, I'm a words of affirmation. I need my wife to tell me that she loves me. I need to hear it. And men generally as a group don't get that, right? And then when you look at the fact that the lion's share of men aren't with someone, so they don't really have, other than their mom, a big frame of reference on how to put somebody else before them.
But they'll probably still find something. I remember you and I were speaking, I think, after last week, um, about I'd mentioned that the um, what was it, the opening lyrics to the song Teardrop by Massive Attack, the lyrics by Liz Fraser, is love is a verb, love is a doing word. And I always thought that quite, like, I thought, obviously that has layers to it. It's quite poetic. I really like that phrase. And it also was kind of a reminder to me that, so maybe love is like an emotional state. There's definitely an emotional component to love. I was thinking of love as like a frame or like a heuristic, so kind of like a rule set that you have around, I don't know, engaging with a certain person or whatever you love. We'll talk about people for
I'm
now.
going
So
to
like
bring
when
Aaron
you're
back.
when you're thinking about your wife,
Yeah.
you're going to have like a rule set that is based in love, but is still like a heuristic, still a pattern of behavior that you have towards her that's obviously going to be different than your pattern of behavior towards me or somebody who's at a outer circle of acquaintanceship, as opposed to love, which is like, right next to your heart. Obviously, she's your wife. Um, so like love is like an emotional state. It's a heuristic, and then it's
It's your
also
actions.
yeah. It like, well, let's talk about for a sec. So what is does it make any? So here's a question again. I don't know the answer to. I'm just probing. Does it make any sense to talk about love if there is no action associated with it?
What do you think, Fly? I think
So
your take on
can
that.
you think of love in a way that doesn't in some way relate to a doing?
I mean, a lot of people want. I mean, I read the book The Five Love Languages, and I found out my love language is affirmation and touching. I'm a hugger, you know.
That's all about doing, right? Like I know nothing about those
Yeah,
love languages. I've
yeah,
just heard of it, but it sounds like it's about different ways of
yes,
doing.
but well, it's what that person who when you so-called love a person, it's the energy that you give into that person, and they're willing to accept that. Because we have seen the other side of love when people go through divorces or when they're breaking up. Like, damn, I was sleeping with the enemy the whole damn time. I mean, people love is what they. It can be selfish at times.
Acceptance keeps coming, so a part of love definitely involves acceptance. There's no question. I'm
You
putting
have to accept
acceptance
it.
based on
Yeah,
trust.
to love me in spite of me. Like, you know all the bad things about me. My wife knows all my shortcomings. She knows all my idiosyncrasies, and yet she still loves me without a. I hate using the term condition because that one of the real truisms of our generation today is men are not loved unconditionally. Only women and children are. Men are loved on the condition they can produce something. So
That's
I don't.
valid. That's
I don't.
I
valid.
don't. I think there's one exception to that. Your a man's mother.
Right? Yeah.
Like
The
my
Yeah,
mama's
he
mom.
said
boy.
that.
My mom loves me unconditionally. I've given her plenty of reason over my lifetime to like to just either write me off or to at least think like less of me or love me less or pull away, and she never has, not for a moment. I think that's why, like in most cultures, when you insult a man's mother, like you're
You're gonna get
basically
beaten.
saying you're inviting lethal violence because you're attacking the one thing, the one person in that man's life who loves him unconditionally, who he can lose his job, he can get depressed, he can just like let himself fall into the deepest hole, he can become a criminal, his mom will still love him. I think it just is the one, I think the one, and that's why I think like mothers are, I think fundamentally it explains a lot of why women how are why they are and why they're different from men. It's not to infuriate us. It does, it's in no reference to us at all. It's because at some fundamental level they have to be something that can love unconditionally no matter what. Like, if I had a, I can only speak hypothetically because of course this hasn't happened, but I think that if I was a father and I had a son who ended up being like a career criminal, maybe murdered somebody and was completely unrepentant, like a total just the
Dickhead.
worst type of person, I would take it as an immense personal failing, and I would also just be like, if the state wanted to kill him, I would be like, you know, do I still love him? I don't think I would anymore at that point. It would just be like, I tried my best. It was my failing. I did everything I could. But I know that his mother would be crying as he got executed. I might be crying more for the idea of what a failure the whole enterprise was. She would be crying specifically for him. And I think that whatever it is, like that difference, it's necessary because um I mean, if we didn't have the unconditional, completely trustworthy, no matter what we do, love of our mothers, I don't know if we would have the heart to do anything at all. I
So
mean,
I'm gonna jump
the
in
the
for a minute.
world the world kind of coarsens us pretty quickly, especially if you come from a rough neighborhood, if you come from a third world country. I mean, you don't really get much of a childhood, right? And your only anchor is going to be your mom. So without that, like Jordan Peterson said, I'll finish my point. Peterson said, like, growing up without a father in the home is really, really, really bad. Growing out without your mother, like he doesn't even know, like he didn't even have words. He's just like, it's, I think now the one thing I would say is that the studies have shown that a father can also be that maternal figure, like men are very adaptive, but if you don't have a father who can adapt and do that, I think you're effed. Anyways,
So I'm gonna let Meme chime in for a minute because I have an interesting question for his generation. You see
Yeah.
a lot today with the whole moms that are um, what's the word? They're narcissistic. They're taking that unconditional love and then as an example, they're dressing them up like girls. Like you're seeing this
Oh yeah.
transition of young men, you know, 5, 8, 9, 10 years
And I
old,
have something
and
to say about that too. On after you finish.
so there's that a violation of that
I'm
love.
writing the dark sides of love. I don't think
Yeah.
it's a violation. I think it's a feature, not a flaw. I think
Okay, that'd be interesting. But don't hear what Meme has to
that
say.
anyway. Yeah.
Go ahead, Meme.
Okay, so this is a little slightly off topic, but it's relevant to it. It's I don't fully blame the parents in a sense for this. I don't think this is more of an aspect of how do I word this? I might not be educated enough to understand the sense of it, but this whole brainwashing is very real.
Yeah,
Um,
can I try and add to your point
sure,
just
sure.
for a second because I so agree with you. I think that I think that a lot of people who are I would just call sane and rational and look at this crazy transgender child mutilation stuff. The only way they can make sense of it in their head is to think, well, all the parents who are doing that and supporting that, they all know in their heart of hearts that that's wrong. They're just playing a shell game. It's
Or they
because
don't even
politics.
know.
I agree with you. I think much scarier is that no, they don't even know. I agree with you 100%. I think they are genuinely doing this out of love. They honestly, in their hearts, think this is for the best interest and this is the loving action that they should perform to their child. That's the way scarier.
That's what I
Yeah,
was trying to articulate
Yes.
there.
yeah. And
So
Jordan
please,
called
yeah,
it the
I agree
devouring
with you.
mother. And Jordan calls it the
Yeah.
devouring mother.
Yeah. See that's definitely a thing. Like even so, I have a 10-year-old sister, and I was discussing with my parents about this, and she went to the same Catholic school I went to. Catholic school. It was not like very prestigious, but it was a Catholic school, and they have this brainwashing, trans, whatever stuff, kind of to a minimal of what it seems to be apparent on like like the media and stuff. What it seems, I think we're seeing the extreme ends of it, but it is still very apparent. There's definitely a lot more of like so there's a lot of confusion that's caused by this, and it also messes this is articulated to the love aspect of it, because then when they mature and they're gonna start dating and stuff, they're gonna be so much more lost because of this, because it causes so much confusion.
And distrust.
Yeah, there's no exactly.
You're breaking the foundation of what a definitional experience. Because like I was talking about this the other day with a customer of mine. We are talking about religion, right? And we're like, okay,
Yeah.
if you're born in Tibet, you're gonna have this religion. If you're born in Texas, you're gonna have this religion. If you're born in New York as an Italian, you're gonna be a Catholic. If you're born in Italy,
That's Richard. That's an old Richard Dawkins point
right?
about how you
The
can't have religious certitude because you're the complete
what you're told
random.
first.
Well, the randomness of the geography of your birth basically determines what religious persuasion you're going to be.
Right. So that being said, right, you're the first person to love you is your mom.
Always.
Okay, and
And
then
and to add to that, look
and
what
dad.
happens when that doesn't happen.
Oh,
The Romanian orphanages that when the collapse of the Soviet Union happened, and there was an influx of all these children that had been in these Soviet state-run Romanian orphanages where the children had received all the proper biological care, but there was like one nurse for like 300 kids sort of thing, so none of the babies got any individualized loving care. like, and then a ton of those kids got adopted in the West, and like there've been a ton of papers done about them because a huge proportion of them psychopaths, like totally psychopathic, no emotional, no ability to love or bond or empathize or anything. So it, as far as we can, and the studies seem to indicate like the only thing that's ever shown any hint, as far as I know, of having a chance of changing the behavior of someone like Ted Bundy is religious conversion, but even then usually doesn't stick. So
Yeah, that'd
it's,
be quite difficult to change.
yeah, it's so it seems like if you don't receive, I don't think it has to specifically be from like a woman with a vagina, but if you don't receive some analog of that intense maternal dedication and affection and one-on-one, like babies can only see like about a foot for a while because that's all they have to see because the mom's going to be holding them that close. If you don't receive that, there's just some part of your basic emotional and empathic wiring that does not um, develop.
But then
And as
there's
far as we can tell, once you miss that opportunity, it's gone. You can't later in life
Let me get
fix
Aaron's
that.
thoughts. Go ahead, Aaron.
Well, I'll rewind a little bit, and I'll just say that the attachment between a mother and their child versus father and child, there's probably a couple biological reasons behind this. Number one, the mother carries the child to term. So as a fetus,
Sorry.
can you hear me?
Yeah. Uh huh.
Okay. As a fetus, there's a bond that's forming even right there. The second is probably easier for a father to rationalize this, and this might be a touchy subject, but you know, there's a chance that the father is actually the father, but there's also a chance that the father is not. The mother is the only one that truly knows who conceived the child.
Hmm. Interesting.
So just
Yeah,
throw
that's
that
a
out
pretty
there.
dark
That
take on that.
Yeah.
it could be easier for a father to be dismissive of, well, that's not my kid, or yeah, there's no way that boy came from my loins.
Well,
Well, fathers are also designed to like spread seeds, and women
Yeah.
because they
Exactly.
carry all of the biological consequences
True.
that are
You know,
negative of
Mhm.
another thing,
childbirth. Yeah.
a woman has a baby, that's another human being growing within her body.
Yep.
I mean, can we even imagine that as men?
No.
Another
No.
body growing inside my body. So
Yeah,
yes,
it's not celebrated enough.
No, it's
I
not.
mean,
yes, that's love unconditionally. The pain that she goes through, that's love. That's
on
love.
that dark side of love, I just posted a little snippet about Rosemary Kennedy, who was the eldest daughter. She was the sister of President John F. Kennedy, and she had some seizures, some violent mood swings. So basically, my sister. And in response to those issues, her own father arranged for her to have a prefrontal lobotomy when she was in 1941, when she was 23 years old, and of course, it basically rendered her into a gibbering idiot. It was one of the most famous cases that led to lobotomies being reconsidered and ultimately rejected, although it took decades. But there can be like, I think it would take a real cynic to argue that her father did that, like recommended her, like, he got her the best medical care. They're the Kennedys.
Yeah.
Even before JFK was president. Oh no, yeah, they're a dynasty. They're the Kennedys. Like he did that out of love. And I think that, yeah, sometimes like it's just one of those ugly manifestations of,
Unintended consequences.
yeah, it's just and sometimes the scariest evils are the ones that are carried out with that genuine sense of love, because it's
Is that almost
um,
likened to what we're seeing in the trans community? Is that, you know,
well, yeah, that's kind of how I was gonna bring that. Yeah, exactly. I was
Yeah,
gonna
that.
connect it to that.
Mhm.
Where to me, that I always try, because to me the whole, like, I know where I stand on the whole trans kids issue. It's like, no, let's
Wait,
not
can I
go.
can I comment on that real
sure.
quick? So I actually know I so I'm the I play on a lot of Minecraft servers, and I was talking to this kid, and I didn't care or whatever. I'm pretty sure he was like 14 or something, and we were talking and stuff, and I didn't realize, but he is transitioning, and he started when he was pretty sure 11 or 12. I don't remember. And he got on the blockers at 11 or 12 or something. I thought it was 13, but I guess you can get him at as young as 10. Which which I was like, dude, what the? See,
I
grown up
knew a pre and
conservatives.
post-op. I've known 4 trans people through my work, various workplaces in 20 years, because Vancouver's a place that people like move to after getting trans surgeries because it's a very open and tolerant city.
See, I didn't really believe that it was like
I've known a
full
bunch of trans
thing.
people.
Yeah, I knew that there was an adult thing,
yeah.
but I didn't realize it was like a common,
most
not really
successful-
common, but a thing.
The most
for
successful
kids.
trans person I knew, who I was also closest friends with until we're not friends anymore, but it has nothing to do with the trans issue, actually. It just, like, kind of just drifted apart. Just one of those things. But
Yeah.
we worked together at London Drugs like 15, 20 years ago, and I knew her as Andrew, and Andrew grew up with a rich family, very progressive, and so,
That's a
Andrew,
common theme.
oh yeah,
That's
for
a
sure.
common theme.
It's a rich person problem. And so Andrew had access to all the hormones and surgery and everything from, I think, about the age of 9. And Andrew's the one that I call, of the 4 trans people I've known, Andrew's the one that I call quote unquote true trans, which is that 0.01, the one that's the part that's not social contagion. Because Andrew didn't make any sense. And here's the weird thing. By that time, I'd had plenty of gay friends. I knew what gay, like, I'd been to gay clubs to party. I knew I'm
Damn.
totally straight, but it's a great place to pick up chicks is you go to a gay club. And
The fuck?
Wow.
oh god, if you didn't know that, oh my god.
Dude, I did not know that.
It's a cliche.
Hold on, we're gonna hold on. Let's not go there.
That's very off. That's it.
We're gonna bring the conversation
to make sure
back.
Everyone's thinking I'm not suddenly.
It's
Guys,
okay.
it's okay. It's a male show. You're allowed to deviate. Guys, pro tip: in the city of Vancouver, it became such a cliche to do this. So here's how it worked. Women sometimes want to go to a club and just dance and get their drink on with their girls and not really be hit on by guys. And they realized, where can we go to get that? Oh, we can go to the gay clubs. And those gay guys are all fabulous to party with anyways. And they're not creepy and hit on us. They actually protect us. So then you got a bunch of straight guys who are trying to figure out, hey, where did all the hotties go? This place is a sausage fest. One of their gal pals fesses up, hey, we're all over at this hot gay club downtown. Why don't you just come in? Like, as long as you're secure and you can handle getting hit on by the occasional gay guy, every single woman who looks hetero in that place is, and there's no dudes here hitting on her. It is a free-for-all. So, like, if you're a secure dude that can handle getting hit on by guys, you go to a gay club that has tons of hotties in it. Well, it got to the point where those gay clubs, the women stopped going to them because they were tired of getting hit on by straight guys who had all figured out to go to the gay clubs. So yeah, it was just a thing.
So
Back to the point.
I'm gonna bring us back on
Back to the
topic
point.
for a minute. So, I think it's interesting that love has quite a few offshoots.
Oh, sorry. And to finish my point, that true trans person, before I went on that tangent, that true trans person didn't make any sense as a gay guy. Because I already had a bunch of gay friends. I knew, like, yeah, that's where we were on before I tangented.
Yeah,
The
and
true
wait,
trans
that's what I was
person-
trying to get at.
And then, as Lauren, when Lauren turned, I think, about 19, Andrew turned into Lauren, went away from the London Drugs, came back 6 months later. Lauren was a knockout. Lauren is one I show pictures to people, not telling them her story. And Lauren's one I have no problem using the pronoun with. Lauren went over to China and did modeling for a few years without telling them, just totally passing as like a 10 out of 10 hottie who's just a bit thin with like basically Asian hips.
Yeah, wait. Back to my point about the love thing. There was a point about this trans person that articulated back to it. There was he's dating a lesbian girl, and that is what struck me. That's what I wanted to get on this get on
Oh,
top
now
of
you've
that.
Okay, so
confused me.
Yeah,
let
that's what I thought.
yeah. So hold
So
on.
hang on. Okay, let's try. Yeah, let's get a whiteboard. So
Let's.
trans man.
Okay, trans man is transitioning to a girl.
So
Okay.
biological man
Yeah, I didn't want to call him a woman. Who the
is
fuck
with a
does that?
biological female,
Yes,
That
who's
likes
gay?
women.
Yeah,
and they're like,
yeah, and he doesn't even look
who
like a
just
girl at
ends
all.
up being
Yeah.
kind of hetero.
That's what I was thinking, but he actually got real mad at me on block because I said something like that.
They've taken the most circuitous route possible, hitting all the stops to end up at like a gender
Normal.
binary, basically.
I
So-
know. That's
Okay.
what I'm saying.
So I want to.
That's funny.
That is kind of interesting, and I think that's when you talk about relationships with people, right? There is a lot of things that play into that relationship, right? So me and my wife were talking about the other day how people grow out of love. You hear people, oh, we fell out of love, right? You hear that term all the time, especially when people are getting divorced. Oh, we just, we don't love each other the way we used to. Well, the thing that me and my wife were talking about that I think really has a point that we tend to accentuate in our relationship is that you're a growing individual, right? And most couples do is instead of growing in the same direction together, sharing in each other's growth, right? Supporting each other's growth, you independently begin to grow without improving or including the person you're with. And I think that's part of the plight is that love, like, so in the Bible, I'm going to use the Bible for a minute because the Bible has a really interesting definition of love, right? It says love is kind, love is patient, love is understanding, love is long suffering, love doesn't hold an account, love doesn't harbor ill, love wants the best for the other. So it's very selfless in its definition when you look at it from a biblical and a historical point of view, right? It's always someone, Jesus loved us enough to die for our sins. And we talked about last podcast was sacrifice, right? So you have to include love with the term sacrifice because to sacrifice or to forfeit something, you have to like something more than you to forfeit your time, what you want.
Your energy.
Yeah, you talk about self love and what that looks like, and that's not as an easy thing to say because love, by definition, as most people would have it, is to put something before you. But if you love yourself, you're in fact putting you before everything else. And I think, Fly was talking about that, and I think it's something we should really unpack in the context of what does it really look like to love yourself, and then how does that um, open up the ability to love someone else? Because if you can't love you with your own flaws and have the self understanding to say, yeah, I'm not perfect right now. I know that, but I love the person I am and the person I'm becoming. And then I want you to love the person I'm gonna be with the
Love
appreciation
the
that
journey,
it's an
not the
effort.
destination.
Right, and being a part and parcel of that journey for each person. So I'm gonna let Aaron, or actually Fly, you haven't spoken for a minute. You're welcome to chime in, brother. What do you think?
Well, when you love yourself, you put out that energy out in the universe, and you can't. I mean, it's gonna boomerang it right back to you. And in order for me, the way I understand, the way I believe that we go believe, the way I know that I must first love myself in order to have love come back to me. You have to know how, because we teach people how to treat us, and we know what we want, or we think we know what we want. Love-based relationship, or what love is to us. So You have to love yourself first.
Yeah, and how do you do that?
You love yourself by accepting who you are.
But if you have flaws, right?
You
So
accept all your flaws, everything about you. You totally accept it. You love
I
on
think
it.
that's the difference between a narcissism, because narcissists only accept the good things about themselves. They don't accept the
You
flaws.
accept everything about you. You accept it, and with accepting that, that means you have regained the power over you. Hey,
Well, it's
here's
like
the
Eminem at the end of 8 Mile, right? You just
right,
tell the crowd
right.
all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
stuff that the other guy was
That's a
going to
good
say
analogy.
about you, and
That's a good
now,
analogy. Yeah.
now what's he going to do? Right, he's got nothing.
Because can no one make you happy? They can only add to your happiness or subtract from it. You have to be happy within.
yeah, that's interesting because like love and happiness and love and misery, right? And we had the conversation about hate too, right? Because you have spectrums, you have love and hate, and both are really strong emotions, and both elicit irrational behavior. Think about what people
Well,
do
and they're
in the
kind of connected.
name of love, right? I loved you
Right.
so much, right, that I had to kill you. I couldn't let you go, right?
More
And then
like, I love you so much that if somebody messed with you, I would kill that person.
yeah, you would
Like,
enact
lethal
yeah
violence becomes
that
my
like my wife
go-to.
mess with my wife, and you will see.
Yeah, and that's like, I remember the one time when we were babysitting a dog, this big dog, for friends of ours. I would have been like 12 or 13 at the time, and loved this dog, big, like 100-pound golden retriever. And I had a cat named Sadie who I loved a lot more because she was my cat, and she was getting older, and she had just had double knee surgery, and she wasn't supposed to like even walk around that much. And all of a sudden, I see the dog chasing her full on, and looked like he was going to kill her. He actually had a bit of a history with cats, even though he was a great dog. And I chased after him with a machete. And, in my heart, I was like, afterwards, I was thinking, like, man, I would have cut that fucking dog's head off if I had caught him. Like, don't touch my cat, you asshole. Like, this, and it's just like, yeah, no, I
And it
really
was
love that cat.
it's a quite primal thing.
Well, and I would have been and to be clear, you know, I nothing happened, and I would have been very sad if I'd actually hurt that dog, because
Oh yeah,
it's not
because
the
then
dog's fault, and he was a great dog. He just had a thing with cats, and what are you gonna
This
do?
this comes
It was
back
our
to
fault
my
for letting him be out of control near our cats. Like, it's not the dog's fault. So it would have been a completely irrational action. But in that moment, it sure felt like that. Like, well, obviously this is what's going to happen next. Allah Akbar, flap, off goes the dog's head.
good,
Like,
Aaron.
yeah.
this just comes back to one of the things I was saying earlier. Like when I kicked it off, at least what I was saying is it's an emotion. It's a very strong emotion, and emotions have us do some pretty irrational and illogical things. And
Well, that begs the question. So, do we normally, when we are faced with a deeply biological emotional state that can put the person experiencing it in a highly suggestive, irrational, likely to make illogical decisions state of being, are normal as rational agents, not trying not to be slaves to our evolutionary origins, we normally caution against going with that emotional state. So let's talk about why love seems to be the one where we kind of throw caution to the wind, and we're like, well, let's not be as cautious as we normally. You talk about like compare love to rage. Rage is an
Oh,
emotional state that has us making irrational, illogical choices too, and we all caution
I got
ourselves
the best
as
example.
men to not succumb to that emotional state. And yet when we're talking about love, we all
Right.
openly tell each other and ourselves to succumb to it. I'm not
it's okay,
suggesting
yeah.
that we shouldn't, so let's just talk about why there's a difference.
So I'm going to give us the example that will highlight it perfectly. You walk in on your wife cheating and you kill her.
Okay, so hold on. I
Act
have a
of
question.
love, like,
I immediately
or you
that
kill
says
the
so
guy
much
that
about
did
you.
it.
I'm about to say, okay, because here, we're such different people that if I walk in on my wife cheating on me, my immediate reaction is to kill the dude, and I know that's not right.
Oh,
Like,
I
because the
was saying, I
dude
wasn't necessarily saying
might
kill
not
her.
even know. The dude might not know. She might have deceived him. The dude might be completely innocent. It's
Right?
the
No,
wrong
no,
move.
no.
Killing her makes more sense. But I know in my heart, I'm just like, die, you fuck. And then I would sort her out. I don't know.
I mean, if I had a situation like that, I walked in and saw that, I was like, don't stop, keep fucking, don't stop. And then you both gotta
I
go.
wish I could be that cool. I wish
You
I could be
both
that fun.
gotta go. Yeah, you
Yeah.
gotta go. But finish what you're doing.
That's the rational, like, fucking just
Right.
secure.
Will
Yeah.
you actually have that reaction
I've
in
never
that
had
moment?
that. I've never had that moment. I don't actually know how I would react, but I like my animal lizard brain would immediately want to just pound the dude. I'm not gonna pound the wolf. That's not a thing. But I'd be angry, and there'd be a dude there who shouldn't be there. So that'd probably be enough.
Okay, but it's the deceit that we're
Especially if
mad
I
at.
thought, like, if I looked at him and I thought I could take that guy, I'd probably beat him up a little.
But there's that.
But you love her, and when you accept her back, it will never be the same.
Well, that would be, I've thought about that, certainly. I've had 6 long-term relationships in my life, all with wonderful women that I don't regret, that I'm still friends with most of them. And to my knowledge, I've never been cheated on. So whether or not I have doesn't bug me, because I'm pretty sure I haven't. Nothing ever came up. But I've thought about it, like, what if that happened? Like, what if, maybe not the so dramatic situation of walking in on them literally, but I just see, like, she's acting weird with her phone and hiding it from me, and I get it one day, and I find the messages, and I'm like, oh,
Right.
okay. I've thought about that. And, because a lot of guys, well, okay, I shouldn't make that specific to gender. Everyone, like, lots of people cheat. A lot of partners will accept that, take their partner back, sort of thing. Like, again, I
But is
can't
that love
say
or is that
absolute.
is that
Well, I don't know.
love?
I can't say in my heart of hearts would I do that or not, like, in the moment. But as far as what I think right now, no, she'd be gone immediately. That violates the contract.
Yes, that's
Like,
where
to
I was
me,
actually going to
love
go.
between 2 consenting
It's
adults,
a contract.
I think it's conditional. That, like, you could call it a contract as a metaphor that works, absolutely. Like, the marriage is literally a contract with vows, and you sign a shit and all that. But I think at its most fundamental level, yeah, I mean, it's certainly it's an exchange of commitments to a certain behavior pattern and a certain set of boundaries. And the understanding and expectation is that if you violate that, then the
Huge
person,
consequence.
well, it's up to at that point, it's up to the person who didn't do the violating whether or not they want to end the contract. They don't have to, but I think they can at that point.
So that
I'm not a big fan of divorces being made easy. I'm not a big fan of couples breaking up just because, like, oh, I'm just not really feeling it anymore. Like, when they have kids, if they don't have kids, then I don't give an F. But they have kids, and all of a sudden they're just kind of like, oh, I don't know if I'm really into you anymore. I'm not a really big. I'm like, you probably have more of a reason to break up than that. Just stay together for the kids. But once it gets to the point of cheating, it's like, okay, well, if you're literally taking it to that level and you can't, like, you either can't be mature and adult enough to, like, get some kind of therapy or just talk it out, figure it out, or being mature and adult enough to realize it's over, it's done, let's amicably separate, figure out what's best for the kid, and just somebody has to get passive aggressive and cowardly enough to start cheating. It's
so
like, okay, well,
I'm
fine.
I'm gonna read
Not
something.
ideal, though.
I'm gonna read something that'll be interesting into this point. So this is in the Bible, and I'm gonna use it because it's the English language, the Western canon has a lot to do with it.
I think I'm the big atheist in the room. I don't have a
Right.
problem with the
I
Bible being
know.
quoted. I accept
So-
it as a source of wisdom, just not as a source of science.
All right, so here's the quote. It's out of 1 Corinthians. It goes like this: If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all the mysteries and all the knowledge, and if I have faith that can move a mountain, but if I don't have love, I'm nothing. If I give all that I possess to the poor, give my body over to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects. It always trusts. Always hopes. Always preserve. Love never fails, but where there are prophecies, there they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know that in part and prophesies in part. When completeness comes, in which part it disappears. So what's interesting about that is like it's treating love as an absolute. That regardless of what happens, that it rejoices in the truth, hates evil, it doesn't keep records of wrongdoings. Ergo, if your husband cheated on you, yep, you shouldn't keep a record, right? So that's an interesting, very total definition. What is the thoughts of the group to that very specific definition, Aaron?
I would. I mean, I'd say that's good advice. It's as to I wouldn't call it a definition necessarily. It's good advice as to how to interpret and live. You know, a lot of times we say like when you you know when you marry someone, you make a commitment. So and sometimes people mess up. They break those commitments. And I think the Bible is just recognizing that
That we're fallible.
people make mistakes.
What do you think?
And there's probably some practical reasons that I guess I would say tie into that of wanting to uphold the institution of marriage, recognizing that people are flawed and they make mistakes. So there's a practical nature to a lot of that, a lot of what you quoted.
Yeah. What do you think there, Fly?
Well, that's Corinthians, the love chapter. Corinthians 1:13. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that explains love in a view what love's supposed to be.
The ideal.
The idealistic side of what love, supposed to be. On the Jesus concept, because he loved the world and he was patient with man, and but
Right.
but love is not like that. I mean, that's a good concept, but people have different definitions of what love is.
Well, you mean the application
Yeah.
of love is different.
Yeah,
Well, the definitions are different these days too. I think my concern for a long time has been about guarding myself against encroaching signs of narcissism, just because I see it so often in others. And these days there seems to be like the self-love that Fly defines is balanced and sophisticated, because it talks about recognizing your negatives as well as your positives. But the self-love that's being kind of like the TikTok generation's talking about, that's getting talked about in like corporate circles and stuff like that, because all the big corporations are turning into these, they all suddenly think they have psych degrees, these people. It's very odd. And their definition of self-love doesn't seem to have that balance, where it's about like accepting your negatives but with an eye to improve them where possible. Like, obvious, if you're blind, you're not like getting down on yourself for being blind, obviously. Like, you're reasonable about the thing. But if you're like me and you're a little, I'm carrying like 10% extra mass right now, I'd like to lose that, and there's no reason I can't, in terms of, I'm not blind, I can see just fine, my limbs all work, I've got cardio. So I want to, like, I don't want to just I don't want to just accept as a statement of love about myself, oh, I'm the guy that just carries 10% extra mass, even though I don't need to. I want to have a conception of myself that's better than that. And these, the, it seems that the major definition these days of self-love is one where it is love me for, despite and for my flaws, that I'm going to do nothing to fix, ameliorate, apologize for, in any way try and be graceful about.
Like
Instead,
Lizzo.
I'm going to do, yeah, instead, or any of these people. Instead, I'm going to do the opposite, which is I'm going to insist that I need to be my true, authentic self, which is the best way of loving myself, which, as far as I can see, like after they issue those statements, they turn into the most neurotic, thin-skinned versions of themselves, and I'm just and all of a sudden, like, they're not interested in personal responsibility anymore. I never hear them tell self-deprecating stories about their own failures. You know, if they're talking about their own failures, it's always in a framework of them being like the victim of a confluence of forces, and always being unlucky. You know, all of a sudden,
It
again,
happens
once
to
I
them.
gotta, yeah, exactly. Well, it's that locus of control, right? If you have an external locus of control, then you conceive the world as a bunch of things that happen to you with no, you're basically an experience receiving machine and completely passive. But if you have an internal locus of control, then you see the world as an experience that you can do a lot to manipulate, that you can do, that ultimately it's your choice how you feel about and how you react to those set of circumstances, and those within your control you have absolute control over. It's totally up to you. So like it's, I remember learning about that in psychology, and immediately that the description of an internal locus of control maps on to a stoic, like the stoic philosophers from ancient Greece, or were just spot on for that sort of thing. And I'm like, you know, and again, they had that, they were very practical, they were very logical, and yeah, and they didn't, I don't think they would have approved of any of this. People going around with selfie sticks, just endlessly documenting how gorgeous they are, using all these filters to make themselves look even more beautiful. And then if you were to ask them and say, well, does your self-love, is it you could pump the question, you could prep them, and you could say, is your self-love sophisticated enough to contain the ability for you to recognize some of your flaws as well as your successes? So that's a question, that's a softball. It's said they know that, oh, I'm supposed to answer yes to that and then give an example. And the example they would give would be, well, when I look at myself in the mirror, I don't think I'm perfect, even though everyone tells me I am. I can see all these flaws about myself. So no, I would say I have a sophisticated view of it.
Can I
And
get a real quick summary? Sorry, I
yeah, so
disappeared.
I was going to end there. And
Go ahead.
to me, I'm just like, if that works for you, I think you're functionally insane.
Go ahead. Go ahead there, Mean.
Oh, sorry. I just I disappeared for a while and just like, could I get a mini summary real quick?
Oh yeah,
Sorry.
sure. We were quickly.
Where we drifted to, yeah.
Yeah. So when we're talking about love, and I gave a biblical definition of it that was very absolute and very rigid on its expectations, right? And it's deity level love, right? It's something that a human is not necessarily going to be capable of, but it turns out to be the ideal.
The ideal.
Chris was talking around the idea that Fly was discussing. When you love yourself, it's accepting all of your shortcomings in the same context of your positivity. And Chris was articulating that we have a societal currency
The
at the
frame
moment.
now seems to
Imbalance.
be,
You know,
yeah, where like Fly's view of it is sophisticated and balanced, because your self-love is looking at
at
your
you
positives.
objectively.
Yes, and not with a view to like excuse it, where
Yeah.
you find things about yourself that you don't like that are within your power to fix. So, I said, like, obviously a blind guy shouldn't be getting down on being blind. Like, what you gonna do, right? But
Yeah.
you should. But I've actually known a couple of blind guys, and one of them was a really cool guy, and one of them was a giant dick. And as far as I can tell, the only real difference was their outlook. So, I mean, there's a lot of it that, and so the lack of balance seems to be that nowadays everyone's walking around with selfie sticks and thinking that they're only talking about their positives, and when
Oh
they
yeah.
do talk about their negatives, they're talking about negatives that are superficial and irrelevant compared to the giant personality disorders that they have sitting on their shoulders, operating them like puppets.
And or it's just for attention, most of it too. Like, oh well,
Yeah, I consider that a
I
personality
grew up
disorder.
in it. Yeah, I was like, it's definitely a thing now where, well, you guys already know this. It's always just shined on like the perfect image of it too, and this is kind of brings back into the love topic.
Filters, face
Yeah.
changers.
Well, like it brings back into the love topic here. So, it's kind of shown on us like describe. Not really well at articulating this, but
You're fine.
we have a societal kind of thing that shows what love is, even though it's not really that. Or we have outside sources that are forming our opinions on love, or what it's supposed to be. There we go, I got it. What it's supposed to be. We see this from
You
like
could say
anywhere,
like there's a social narrative. There's like a
Yeah,
rough
that's it.
social
That's the word I was
idea,
looking
yeah.
for there. Social narrative. Because
Yeah.
even though that might not be it, we might only see like kind of like the, I guess you call it bliss aspect of it. Like the first like 2 weeks of like a middle school relationship. It's just like the bliss.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
not
those
the
were
real
the
We've
stuff of it.
forgotten. We've grown incredibly in love with compassion, and we've forgotten about, like, I watched a
Yep.
documentary that Vice did, ironically enough, and it was. I know, right? But they they do some good stuff sometimes. It just depends on the topic. This one was about single women in China, and what do they call them? Shan Yu, leftover
The
women.
leftover. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but anyway, not to harp on that. It was more the point. Like in China, a lot of those Asian countries, it just came up. Like the ladies were talking about it. If you're like in a situation like I am, where I'm walking around like with a bit of a gut that I probably shouldn't have, if I was in China, my parents, when they see me, would be like, "Oh boy, you a bit fat. Well, you got to lose some weight." Now,
That's not in the West. That's just like,
No.
good job.
exactly.
You're
Oh,
good.
Look at that tumor you're growing.
those
Oh my
clothes,
God,
those
it's
clothes fit so
beautiful.
well on you.
Yeah.
But it's not even. But that's not even
Beautiful at
fully
any
true.
side. Well, and just to me, it's like, so I guess my question to these super compassionate, ultra sensitive people in the West is like, do you really think that all the people in China and all those other Asian countries, like, there aren't really a lot of fat people in Asian countries? You might have noticed.
No,
They all shame
yeah.
each other pretty harsh about it.
Oh yeah.
Which I think fat shaming
and
is
it
a little
works, right?
good.
Yeah.
Like,
How
it
many
worked for
fat
me.
guys?
Yeah, it worked for me. When I was in 7th grade, I was a
How
fat
many
fuck.
fat guys have to make YouTube confessional videos where they talk about being fat and miserable for decades and then being shamed a bunch and then having enough and losing all the weight and being happy?
I was like,
Like,
I don't
how
think
many do we need
Yeah.
to... I think maybe it's different because guys, when they're fat shamed, like,
Do something.
view it as a challenge and they meet it head on
That's
and they lose the
exactly
weight.
what it did to me.
Women
Yep.
kill themselves or like write sad diaries.
We shouldn't be laughing about that, but it is
I think it's
true though.
I think it's different in terms of how men and women process harassment. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like, well, no, this is
bullying. You could say how they process bullying. Yeah.
bullying. Yeah, they
But
take
okay,
it a
so-
lot more personal, not as a challenge to improve.
Correct.
So, and I'm gonna ask Aaron.
Sorry. To finish my point, my question to the West: do you think that all those people in Asia that fat shame each other, do you think they love each other any less than we love each other, or is it just different? Because I think we're all acting as though we love the best and we know how to love correctly.
Oh, right.
And I think that's insanely narcissistic. Like, where do we get off?
So
I
I'm gonna
agree.
I'm gonna jump in on this for a second. So
I'm going to refill my water.
when you're looking at love in the context of like that instance where you're fat shaming somebody, right? And I'm going to use that analogy for a minute because I think there's some interesting tie-ins to this with that thought process, right? Me and my wife were talking and Aaron about manipulation this morning on a conversation,
Yeah.
and when we manipulate, like as an example, my wife, when I had asked her, and Aaron had brought the question of is manipulation negative, right? And me and Aaron immediately took it as a yes, and my wife's like, well, no, I manipulated my kids all the time because I loved them enough to manipulate them to eat properly, to take care of their room, to learn responsibility. So what
That's
that's
yeah.
an
Yeah.
interesting idea to say, you know, is it that the Chinese people love each other more because they care enough to manipulate their society to taking care of themselves physically? And is it do we not love each other enough here to recognize a flaw in our brother, and then how you present that would indicate some level of compassion, right?
Yeah.
You could do it without being like cruel. You can talk to your mate. When I was fat, my wife came to me and said, you're not healthy anymore, sweetheart. You need to do something about it. She didn't say I was fat. I was 255 pounds. Of course I was fat. But um, I was a tall guy and a big guy, so I just kind of say, yeah, I'm just a big guy.
Yeah, I
But
use that excuse a good bit too.
when I went and changed that and I lost weight and I changed my lifestyle, I lost 80 pounds. Every measurable health standard changed. Like, I feel great and I feel loved because my wife loved me enough to tell me that, hey, you're not healthy.
That's
You
a
need to do
that's a
something.
that's a good point because this is on a little bit different, but it's about the same thing. But you know how the whole world is kind of like all this kind of this goes back to the body positivity thing. We're pushing that this is all like a good thing, like being fat and stuff. But then we'll have these kids that grow up to think, oh, being fat's fine. I'll still be able to find a mate and all this stuff. But you really won't. And
No,
I think that's something that is
you
not
won't
talked about
find love,
enough. Yeah,
actually,
you will never be able to acquire it
Well,
because of this. Or
because
you
hang on.
might be able to, but it's the percentage chance is so low, and it can will completely destroy. It's like a complete imbalance here, and that's something that's not talked about enough. And I wish it was.
I guess I would just throw out just a couple things here. There's a bunch of different things I wanted to chime in on, but I've just sort of let you guys roll. One, being fat or overweight, or maybe another way to say it is well fed. Um,
unhealthy.
well, it is. We know that in today's world, but there was a time when being heavier was a sign of status.
Of quality food.
Yeah, quality of life. I mean,
It still is in like Inuit cultures and stuff like that.
correct. And when you guys were talking about love yourself, but a lot of what I think people are challenged with in terms of loving themselves today is they're trying to live up to a standard that is kind of unattainable, unachievable, and that
Yeah,
causes
it's
all kinds of
definitely a thing.
it
Yeah.
causes all kinds of psychological issues in people today that I'm not sure. I think the social media, there's this awareness of of what people are wanting or expecting to achieve, and you know, if you don't love yourself, maybe you're always pushing for that, and again, I mean, I think it comes back to something. If you make a decision that that's not attainable,
You
go
see,
for it.
I had a mindset on this that was like when I was in a younger age, I thought of this, and I still kind of have this in me, but I kind of knew this at an earlier age, probably about 13. I realized the whole fan shit was just like it's like not valid, and I always bring back to this my one friend Colton. He was
Which
this.
isn't valid. Sorry, just I didn't.
What'd you say?
So I just I missed part of what you said there. The whole witch thing isn't valid.
Oh, I didn't say it isn't valid, but I said wait, shit, I forgot what I said. Fuck.
Well,
I didn't quite hear it.
well,
No,
Just
Damn it, I forgot.
But what I would throw out there,
Sorry, I
though,
didn't
is
mean
that
to derail
Oh,
you.
you're
Shit.
good.
is this image consciousness, tying back to, I think someone earlier talked about, corporations telling people that they're okay to be who they want to be. Actually, I don't think this is
As long as who they want to be is who all the people in
No.
the corporation who run the equity, divestment, and whatever department, as long as you're the same type of person that they are.
No, I don't
If you're
think
someone
that's the
like
case.
me, the last
No.
thing you can do is be me
Yeah,
in a
that's
corporate.
valid.
Trust me, I've tried. Doesn't work.
If well, here's what I will tell you about that. Um, if if you come from a culture where having a mole on your face and having hair grow out of it is a normal and respected thing, I think that's what companies today are saying is, listen, you should be able to be yourself and live your life and still work at our company, and not have people judge you for that, because that's not the Western standard. I think
Well, and to be
that's
clear,
what's actually happened.
I think basic civility basic professionalism. I hope, and maybe that's just what has slid is basic professional standards. I think basic professional standards would preclude anyone from just like hair on mole face. Like
Yeah,
I don't.
I was like, well, that's kind of like
Well,
that's
but
a Gen
maybe-
Z problem.
But
I'm
maybe
about to
people,
say boomers don't really.
That's a
It's not.
Gen
It's
Z
not like
problem.
Gran Torino where we all go around calling each other Polak and all these racist names. Like it's
That's a problem with
I've never
our.
seen that.
You see, it's not racist stuff, of course, but it's definitely a thing with our generation. We're a bit more judgy, probably because of social media and stuff. But in a sense, it's kind of a good thing. But
All the people I work with who are like mid 40s to 50s to early 60s are all kind of like me in the sense that, I mean, they're nothing like me, but I guess the thing they all share with me is that we're all a bit jaded enough where none of us are gonna, like, one of my coworkers is a few years older than me and literally runs Ironman triathlons. He's so freaking fit. He makes me want to kill myself. None of us resent him. He's awesome. Like, and he doesn't. He has never once in all the years I've worked with him ever have I detected even the slightest hint from him, like contempt or like
Judging.
I'm fit. You're judge exactly towards not me, but some of my coworkers who are way less fit than me. Never once, not a bit. It's just all this education they're putting us through,
we
telling us
judge
like
a lot more.
don't judge each other on these non-salient characteristics, and it's like none of us are. Like, have you worked with us? Do you think we all just sit around calling each other a bunch of names I can't say on YouTube because of TOS? Like, no.
Oh, I didn't think of that. Oops.
So,
have I said anything bad? My
you're
bad.
fine.
No. You just can't drop like N or
Yeah.
F.
So
You
here's
can
Okay.
say fuck, just don't say the other F bomb.
yeah. So
Okay.
here's the thing, and I'm going to kind of loop this back for a minute. And Chris wasn't present when I said this earlier, and I think there's a lot to this, is in that when my wife and I were talking with Aaron this morning about manipulation, right? And she used to manipulate her kids because she loved them into doing the right thing, right? So when we
It's like just semantics. You can replace manipulate
hold on.
with
Well, here's
teach.
influence, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So when I was using it in a different context, when you talk about China, right? Do they shame the fat people, right? Is it that we don't? Is it that they love their people enough or more that they don't want them to be unhealthy, so they will shame them? They will do the unkind or the perceived unkind thing of pointing out their flaw, or is it that we're like, oh, I love them so much, I don't want to hurt their feelings?
2 words. Let's bring 2 words into this. Tough
love. Yeah.
love. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah,
So
that's what I
let's
was about to
talk
say.
about
So
what is tough love and how does that
So,
challenge or at
I'm
least
gonna-
expand?
hey,
Yeah, let's
Fly.
unpack that.
Fly,
Yes,
I
sir.
want you to jump
Yes.
on this one because you have a unique story of your life where you receive tough love against your will. So
Okay.
That's most tough love, I think. I mean, it's
no,
just,
no, I mean, but he made choices in life that brought him to a place where he did receive tough love. Would you agree, Fly?
Yeah. It was tough love that that I
if the
take
But
question's
accountability.
that's
indiscreet, by the
but
way,
hold
I
on.
don't
take
share.
accountability.
Like,
I take
Hold,
accountability of
but
producing this tough love to myself.
right, that's what I'm saying. I think it was the catalyst to your ideology of first love yourself and how
Yeah,
you
I had
and
to go
that
within. I had to
that's
go within to
but
love myself.
but I think that's important as to how you got there because everybody gets there differently.
well, let's talk because we've already explored the love part. So
Yeah.
what we want to explore is the tough part.
Yep.
So and to unpack, just to like make that a bit more explicit. So we're talking about the idea that um, being this is the universe that we're in, oftentimes there are situations that an individual conscious person can find themselves in whereby they the the next just logically the next thing that needs to happen to them in order for them to progress, particularly out of a hole that they've gotten in, that next thing that needs to happen to them, and it's the only thing that's going to do the work, that thing that needs to happen to them is going to be perceived by them in that moment as quite negative and hostile. And in that moment, they're not going to be able to conceive of it
As love.
as possibly being an act of love. That's right.
Okay. So you've
But
Or
said it.
kindness.
but we know from our, so you take yourself out of the position of the person experiencing it, now
To
the
observing
position,
it.
the exterior, yeah, and it's like we know
We needed
that,
that.
like, yeah, like, so for example, like detoxing a junkie,
So
it's just, it's
now
like, or
now
some kind of intervention for a hoarder. It's like, okay, we know that
let Fly talk.
something dramatic needs to happen that you're not going to like in the moment, but it is for your own good, and we do love you even though this is might actually be physically hurting you.
So
It we still
True,
love you.
gotcha.
true.
Fly, you're up.
They say, hey, they say the kindest people are not born that way. They're made. They are the souls
The
that have
kindest.
experienced the kindness. People who are very kind to other people. They are the souls that have experienced so much at the hands of life. They are the ones who have dug themselves out of the dark, who have fought to every loss, who have fought to turn every loss into a lesson. The kindest people do not just exist, they choose to soften where circumstance had tried to harden them. They choose to believe in goodness because they have seen firsthand why compassion, love is so necessary. They have
Well, it's
seen
also,
firsthand why tenderness is so requisite in this world.
and they know the way out. It's I forget what the
That's the story of
metaphor,
my life.
like I forget what the metaphor is, but it's like some guy who's down in a hole, down in the dark, and he thinks there's no way out, and then all of a sudden another guy jumps down in the hole with him, and the first guy says, like, you're an
Now
idiot,
you're
why did you
trapped
jump
too.
down, now you're trapped down here with me.
Right, right,
And the
right.
second guy says, no, I've been down here before,
I know the
I
way
know the
out.
way out, leads him to the ladder, and they
Yep.
both get out with a bit of effort. And yeah, I mean, like, all the best drug counselors I've ever seen are people
We're
who
drug addicts.
former addicts. Yeah, of course, because it's, you can do your best to be empathic and synthesize um, experience that you haven't had, just, watching videos and using your imagination, and that's all good, and you should do that, you should try your best, but
Or
but
combine other
nobody,
knowledge.
well, no, none of us, I don't think any reasonable person would question that somebody who, as an example, me, so I'll put myself as an example. I've never been in live combat, I've never been a soldier, I've watched every war movie under the sun, I've also watched a lot of NSFW live close quarter combat footage of guys, like, I've seen some pretty hardcore stuff. None of that in any way takes me to a level where my imagination, my synthesis of what war is really like is going to be anywhere as close to that of an actual
Same thing with prison.
combat veteran.
Same thing
with prison. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a similar situation. Yeah.
You know,
It's just so it's we do the best we can, but I think that yes, like somebody who's trying to kick fentanyl, how much is he going to listen to my theoretical knowledge compared to a guy who has a 1/100th my vocabulary, but who used to be on fentanyl and has kicked it? Fuck, if I was on fentanyl, I'd listen to the guy who kicked it before I listened to me, just because I sound nice with my fancy words. It's like, have you actually beat this shit? You haven't? That guy has? Get me that guy. Get me that guy, because I know that this is the worst point in my life, and I know that at this point it's either death or out.
right.
So get me the guy who got out.
But that's the thing is, right, when you do find yourself in that bottom of your own barrel, as it were, the thing that lifts everyone out is someone loves you or you learn to love yourself.
Yeah, you have to love yourself, man. I mean, you have to get
one
tired
of
of being
two.
tired.
Yeah.
You have to,
Or you die.
You have to be tired of being tired, Brian. You have to really be tired. And like, man, do I really love myself to find? Because I've been in those situations. I keep finding myself in this situation again. I mean, you know what they say, the definition of sanity is doing the same thing for a different result. So you have to begin to peel the layers back like an onion, and to find the core of who you are, man.
And you can't do that unless you're willing to view yourself and love yourself enough to recognize you have flaws. There are
Have to
things.
love-
Yeah, sometimes view yourself in a
You do have
negative
to
light.
start. Well, you do have to start with yourself. One of the most fascinating accounts of just, I guess you could call it self-love, like extreme self-love. There's a climbing adventure film called It was a book first, fantastic book called Into the Void, written by one of the two guys who experienced this. They were on a high altitude climbing expedition, two of them, on some 20,000 foot awful mountain down in South America. They were prepping for Mount Everest, and one of them experienced a severe injury up at the top of the mountain, where he essentially put his shin bone up through his knee. He just like shattered his leg. It was completely effed. And his partner tried to belay him down the mountain. They're in the middle of a snowstorm, just terrible conditions. Eventually, his partner had to, very controversially, had to cut the rope, had to let him go. He fell into this ice crevasse, and his partner left him, and he was just down. He was horribly injured, and he writes about it very lucidly in his book. And it's covered a bit in the documentary, but it's more in the book. And it's interesting because it's one of those rare cases where they say there's no atheists in foxholes, but it's like, well, by his own accounting, he was raised Catholic. He had become an atheist because he was a doubter. And now, at a moment that seemed where he was clearly he was at death's door. His perception was correct. He started questioning like his own beliefs and all that, and he started thinking about God. And he ultimately rejected God, believed in himself, and literally using his teeth and like a hand, he clawed his way 150 feet out of an ice crevasse, formed and then he like crawled several miles because he couldn't even stand completely. Like what he did was insanity. And I always wondered at it because I was like, most of the time people find the strength to do something like that by putting their trust in something bigger than themselves, by just being like, into your hands, oh Lord, and they just try as hard as they can. And like we see a lot of accounts like that. This was one of the rarest ones where I was like, wow, this guy like rejected God and gained like a superpower because of that, and believed in himself all the way to his own rescue. He rescued himself. But I guess now it's interesting. The piece of the puzzle that you've given me is, well, he did really believe in himself. Like the part I couldn't get over, like all he did was reject God. How did that give him, like was he so spiteful? Like, yeah, take this God that I don't believe in. Like that doesn't even make sense. How does that motivate a person through the pain? But no, it must have just been like he was like, I don't need God. I have me. I've got this. And then he just pulled off this. I can't even imagine how he did. those guys are way tougher than me. But yeah, no, that's something that I'll add. Like he must have just like because I always wondered where did the motivation come from.
Well, it's a
Like
mental thing.
denying God doesn't give you positive motivation.
No.
That's always my that's why I think angry atheists so often turn into bad people or just turn into these toxic kind of amoral a-holes because it's like you need something positive to believe in. Negativity isn't something that you build on.
Yeah, I was like, for a second there, I was like,
I
this
thought
is a bit off topic, but
just a tad, yeah.
just a tad. But speaking of motivation, like from personal experience, I've told this to people before, and I've not had a single person actually like say that this was a good take on it, but I strive off of negative energy. That's probably a bad thing, but I've
I'm
always
similar.
yeah. You see, I always improve on negative. I can't think of anything positive because if I think of one thing that's positive, I then grab onto it and be like, and then like just lose all motivation in a sense, or like drive to accomplish and or make myself better. I know it's like a dark way of thinking, but I strive off of the negative energy.
Well, let me give you a concrete example from my experience, and you tell me if this resonates at all with what you're talking about. See if we're in sync here. So, like,
Yeah.
a way I thrive off of negativity is like I did. I'm very very good at handling like doing customer service either over the phone or face to face. I'm very very good at handling angry, escalated, pissed off customers because I just have this frame of mind I go into where I just have two thoughts going through my head: kill them with kindness, and the more that you hate me now, the more you're going to love me at the end. And that I get like super competitive about it, and the more negative BS they throw at me, it just goes through this weird filter and it inverts and it just gives me energy, and I'm like, oh,
that's
you got me
close to
good
it.
there. Oh, you're gonna really love me when
So-
when this is all done, and I got what I want, and
You're
and
happy.
you didn't really, but you're happy. Yeah.
So
exactly.
okay, interestingly, and that negative versus
Well, so
positive.
does that map at all onto what you're? Is it like a framing thing where it's like
that makes sense, but I'm
like
more
Jocko
go
Willink
off
doesn't
with
talk about like when life throws you shit, the first thing you should say is good.
Well,
now
see,
I have an
I'm more
opportunity to
taking of
grow.
like creating it myself in my own mind, not being thrown at it by other people, or realizing like, okay, I guess yes, in a sense yes, but also manifesting it so it's greater in my
Okay, well
mind.
here, so save yourself in the eyes of somebody who's not liking what you're saying right now because it's a bit vague.
Yeah, it is.
Differentiate what you're talking about from hostile sadism.
well, so I think what he's talking about, and
Okay,
hopefully
yeah,
we'll-
just to concretize it a bit, like how would this manifest, like
So-
in a real world situation?
So here's the thing, right? I hate losing more than everybody else likes winning. Okay, that's a way of presenting what he's saying. He's taking
You very much like winning, yeah. I remember
Yes.
from playing clan battles with you, yeah.
Yeah, I hate losing more than everyone else likes winning. Everybody likes to win, but I fucking hate losing. By a lot, do I hate losing. So that is a negative ideology. It's a similar way of thinking. You're taking the things that you don't like about yourself, and you're using that as the drive to make you a better version of you. And that is
Yeah.
and that is loving yourself, right? And
Right.
it's what motivates you. Okay, some people are
You know what it
motivated
takes,
by their
though?
shortcoming.
You know what it takes, though? I just suddenly realized that. Like, you have to, because it's like, so why doesn't everyone just adopt that mentality and we all just bootstrap ourselves?
We never
I think
lose.
you have to know, you have to have done it or seen someone close to you done something like it at least once, I think, to really believe that, like, because I think if you're depressed, you look at the negative parts of yourself. Like, I'm just thinking about me and my worst moments, or like some family members, how they talk about themselves. Like, they look at the worst parts of themselves and they don't see it as, ooh, I could really fix that
Improve.
and become, yeah, exactly, there's room for growth there. They're you could really just boil it down to like cup half full versus cup half empty, and it's like, how
Well,
do you get
I
cup
like
half
that.
empty people with the exact same set of circumstances to just change the frame of how they're thinking. Like to me, I just realized that how you choose to frame it is completely arbitrary anyways, so why not choose the
Well,
frame that has better results for you, both materially and psychologically? Like it
you know,
made it pretty
Hey,
easy to
before I
me
was
to
trying
be
to
a
say
glass
something.
is half full person.
yeah, well, the cup half full, the cup half empty concept. Hey, what people miss the point is that the cup is refillable. It's refillable.
Well, but I think okay, but let's okay, but the point of the metaphor is that with the exact same set of circumstances, a depressed person can look at that set of circumstances, this fact pattern, and say, this is hopeless. And a positive, empowered person could look at that same fact pattern and say, there is hope.
Well,
And
like
they're
what
both
Brian just said. You said
correct
you hate
in a
losing, right?
way. But to me it's just like they both see the same fact pattern. Neither one of them is delusional, but to me there is a utility to being positive, because as far as I know, if like in order to progress we have to try to do things, and sometimes things fail, but we
Yeah.
have to keep trying, right?
Well,
And so if if our default frame is a negative one, where we're just thinking about how bad it's going to be when it fails and we're never thinking about the good, then we're never going to have the heart to try at all. Like there's a there's a utility to just being positive.
Well, there is, and it's
As
also
sappy as that sounds, it
well.
sounds sappy to me.
I'm gonna. We're at that hour and a half point. And that's
But it's
usually what.
convinced me. I mean, I just
All right.
accept that, like, if you have a choice between two, here's my final thought. If you have a choice in life between two frames, and and there is like, and neither one of them, as far as you can tell, is like self delusion. Like, neither one of them is delusional. They're both recognizing an extant fact pattern, but one of them is just endlessly negative and complaining and has no vision of a positive future, and the other one is not really complaining. It's just it's noticing like, oh yeah, this is going wrong, this isn't working, this isn't efficient. Here's our plan for how to fix it. Here's what a better future is going to look like. If you have a choice between those two frames, it's like Occam's razor, just like not knowing anything else. Go for the positive one, because we just don't like. In order to progress, we have to keep moving. We have to keep trying. We have to keep hoping that our endeavors are going to succeed, instead of just being endlessly fascinated with the negative potential of them. So, but on the other hand, don't be so positive that you turn into a raging narcissist where you think your flaws are strengths and you don't even notice, you refuse to notice your negatives anymore. I guess I would say my final thought is that love definitely has to have some kind of balance to it, because like just love, unbalanced love, I think in any context we all know that just like unbalanced, out of control love, like does that sound good to anyone? That sounds like the consequences are probably going to be bad,
So I'm going to
unless
kind
it's
of.
your mother.
I'm going to kind of wrap us up a little bit. Um, and we've had a lot of very interesting points on the idea of love, and it went a lot of different places. And we talk about tough love, and we talk about how our mommies loved us, and we talk
The
about
name of the podcast should be, the name of this, whatever this is, should be something that references the tangential nature of it, like
so
today's alleged topic or
yeah.
such.
That's why it's called the Discord discussions, because
right,
And
right.
then it's
Yeah,
just
I
like
was
a
like, we
picture.
barely got to it, bro. We were all
It's
over
like
the
a
place.
picture of Mean with a noose around my neck, trying to like drag me towards something called the topic. We should like have an
basically,
artist. You know what? I'll get the AI art bot to make
there
something.
you go.
You can
So
There you
ChatGPT
go.
that shit.
so each person has a definition of love that resonates with them. I think that as a society, we use the term extraordinarily loosely. I think self love is something that we conflate narcissism for. and we call it self love as an excuse to be selfish. Um, I think the benefit of learned experience teaches you how to love and what love should look like. A healthy love should be that in which, from its biblical definition, doesn't hold an account. But I think that that's also where the humanity has to come in to intersect with the divine. And I think that intersection between the divine love, which doesn't harbor ill will, that doesn't hold an account, that is perfect, is unattainable by humanity. And I think the idea of self loathing is equally terrible. And I think we do that more easily than we do self love. And there's definitely a lot that we've unpacked here that I hope our audience and those who listen to us think a little more about how they enact the love that they receive from others, how that they give it to others, and hopefully we'll find an inspiration or be an inspiration for people to change a little bit on how they view it, to not be so emotionally chaotic about
Attached.
it. Emotionally chaotic because
Okay.
we do stupid things for love or under the guise of love. Oh, I love you so much I had to do this thing, you know, or I did it because I loved you, and then that's the excuse for terrible behavior. So it's one of the few words in our society that is very difficult in my estimation to pin down as a single understanding. I think it's as Aaron said at the beginning, it's a timeline. It's a continuum. If one spectrum is pure love, no account, the other spectrum is pure hate and with no regard. Somewhere along that lines, that word gets turned, and I think
I, I like what I just wrote, by the way. I said, if you conceive of love as being something appropriate to have for your handbag or gaming console, then I predict you will have a chaotic relationship with love in your life.
yeah. So
That's
Now,
valid.
I don't know that that is a testable prediction, and that's just a hunch, but that feels right to me.
so what do you think, Aaron?
I mean, I'd go back to, you know, what I started off earlier on saying that it's an emotion, it's an affinity for something. How strong and what degree it is, that's everyone's personal experience. Your first high school crush, your first high school or junior high school love, whatever that is, that's probably not the same love you feel, when you have your first child, that love for that child. Um, so and but I'm not going to argue that that didn't feel like love to you at the time. So I will go
Yeah,
back to it's an
because how
affinity,
can
and you
you
can,
argue? Because how can you argue if
yeah,
somebody said to you, "I felt more love for my high school
it,
girlfriend than for my firstborn child"? They look you dead in the face.
yep,
They put money on it. You hook them up to a lie detector. They pass. Like what else? Like you have
yep,
no way to prove that
exactly.
that
It
they're not telling the truth.
it's an
It's a
emotion, it's a feeling.
it's self-reported. That's what I was like. It's
Yeah.
completely
Yeah, yeah.
self-reported.
All right.
So
Meme.
so
Uh,
so I guess
sorry.
Yeah.
that's where I would, yeah.
Do you have more,
Let's
Aaron?
say
I'm sorry.
let him finish because I
Yeah, I
interrupted him.
apologize. Yeah.
No, I just wrap it at that, is that, um, and it changes over time. Like everything changes over time. It changes based on experiences and perspectives. Um,
Yeah.
it's something that's highly personal, and that's why it's hard to define, hard to explain, um, because it's rooted in our feelings, and our feelings are very difficult to explain. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Fly. I'll grab you at
Yes,
the
yeah.
end, meme. What do you think, Fly?
Um, man, just what he just said, I back that. It's emotional. It's what you think love is, and what life experiences. We first see it with our parents, supposedly, what it's supposed to look like and look, what does not supposed to look like. But again, I keep going back. You have to first, you can no one make you happy. You have to already be happy. You have to find happiness from within. Then you begin to love, and you put the energy out in the universe. Hope that it come back to you. Oh, and by the way, man, I wanted to say this earlier. I used to be just like you. I hate losing. I lost so much, right? And then I turned that thought around and said, you know what? We never lose. We either win or we learn.
Fair enough.
That's
Well, in
good.
science just says, I mean, like there is no in science, your experiment was only a loss if you actually effed the experiment up, like, a beaker got broken or something like that. But, in science, you're testing, even if you're testing to prove something, if you do the test well and you prove the opposite of what you were trying to prove, well, that's a failure to your theory, but that's still a successful test. You still proved something.
Yep.
And
You
it's
proved that
just,
it wasn't.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, like in war shit, like just for video games, I've like it's all the cliches. It turns out that most of these cliches and axiomatic chestnuts are, yeah, they're all pretty true when they talk about like failure being just an opportunity for growth, and
Mm-hmm.
every success starts with with a with a succession of failures,
Yep.
which is which is what everyone's reminding the leftist media right now while they're laughing at the SpaceX rocket for blowing up. And it's like, you notice that Elon Musk didn't look disappointed at all.
He
He looked
called it a
like, yeah, that's fine.
success.
Well, he said, yeah, there's a 50-50 shot it does the thing or it doesn't do the thing. The fact that it got up and like past all the hardest parts, like, yeah, and we learned a bunch of things about why it failed. So yeah, no, it's fine. Like, we didn't lose any people. So, the Mercury, these 3 astronauts got incinerated on the tarmac. They didn't even make it off the launch pad. The poor buggers. That's a horrifying death. Like, nothing like that's happening now. So, yeah, people, it's that I'm much like, to me, especially at work, like every failure that I have, I don't anymore get wrapped up on how right or wrong other people are. I'm just looking at, well, a bunch of criticisms have been made about me. Let's sort through them and see which ones are fair and which ones aren't. And in my experience, most criticisms have some kind of fairness behind them. Most of the time, I've thought that there's like a bunch of people who just don't like me. Oh, maybe they don't, but they're not going to commit perjury and just make shit up.
Yep.
Usually, they're talking about something that's there. So, my final thought would be, you're on a journey for truth. Truth comes up to you and says, hey, I heard you're looking for truth. And you say, well, I am, but I don't like the way you're dressed. And get out of my way, I'm looking for truth. And so the truth walks away confused. You know, don't be that guy. Your enemies are often, some of your worst critics are often they're going to wrap nuggets of truth in some of the most acidic, difficult to claw and bite your way through packaging and tolerate ever. But if you do it, you're going to find something there where it's like, okay, every single one of my enemies has told me that I'm way too wordy and I should just shut the fuck up because this video is running long. I should probably do that. And so,
Meme.
Oh, it's I have a very similar take to what you have, mean, where I think we use the term too loosely, and it's the word love or a definition of it is being skewed in many forms, but my hard set definition on it, I'm pretty, or not really definition, but my image on it can kind of vary depending on how you were raised. Because I think the way that you learn love, I think we all agree with this, is by your parents. It's all kind of by your parents. And now, because of social media and stuff, and because we're so connected than ever, it's being kind of pushed in a sense where like it changes the definition of it a little bit, but we all kind of root back to what we grew up behind. um, that's really it. I was like, I don't have much to it. That was my last take on it.
Well, gentlemen, I of course appreciate everyone, uh, and more than likely, as we were talking, something that might be an interesting topic for next week for you gentlemen to consider is we've talked about sacrifice and we've talked about love, and you know what's interesting? Both of love and sacrifice need hope. And I think hope might be an interesting discussion as
That
there's
would be.
there's a lot of missing hope. And that's partially where religion intersects with love, life, experience. You hope for a better future, you hope for a better you. So I think hope is an interesting conversation to be had. And with that, I will see you guys on the next discussion.